Welcome folks to day 3 of the 2021 CityJS conference. We've just had 2 days filled with top tech talks and today is gonna be no different. Fantastic stuff. Let's not waste too much time and move straight on to our first speaker of the day. Taken to the stage for your education, your entertainment and your viewing delight is Mandy from Perth in Western Australia. Mandy is a senior developer at Hired Up, and in this talk Mandy is going to be looking at how we can use a combination of sensors in today's modern technological devices in order to kidnap cats. Hold up. Kidnap cats? Let me check my notes. No, it does say kidnap cats. Fair enough, Mandy. I am just keeping you well away from my cat. Thankfully, we are on opposite sides of the planet. Mandy's talk is going to be looking at sensors on our modern devices, as well as inspiring you, giving you some ideas for projects, some tooling tips, and a whole host of other things so that you can walk away and make some pretty amazing visualizations based off of the data they provide. I've been looking forward to this talk all conference long. If you have any questions for Mandy that pop up during this talk, please do not just shout them out in your room. Hold back and deliver them to us as part of the Q&A session, which will be starting immediately after this talk. If you're watching along on YouTube, do let us know what you plan to do with the sensors on your devices after watching this talk in the comment section, as well as keep posting along on social media using the hashtag CityJS2021. Without further ado, Mandy, it is my pleasure and honor to hand the stage over to you.
Hi everyone, and welcome to Fun with Sensors and Browser APIs. Today we are going to have some fun with some JavaScript and some cool APIs, and it's going to be a blast. Well, at least it will be for me. My name is Mandy Michael. I am a senior software engineer at Higher Up Australia. Previously, I was dev manager at a news organisation in Western Australia. I love Twitter. I'm on Twitter as Mandy_Kerr. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. A bunch of my demos are up on CodePen under Mandy Michael. What I guess is important to know about me is that I love experimenting with front-end technologies. I like to see how we can combine different techniques, perhaps ones that we're already used to using, to create new and exciting experiences in our web projects or web apps. So that's what we're going to be doing today. We're going to be looking at some fun sensors, some cool experiments that I did, and hopefully it will inspire you to do some fun and exciting stuff. Importantly, this is my dog Jello. He is in here for 2 reasons. One, I think he's very cute because he's my dog. But also, I use the word Jello in a lot of my demos, or words that rhyme with Jello. So I just like to let people know where that came from because he's such a good boy. Alrighty, let's dive in and get started. So, like I said, we're going to be using some JavaScript today with some browser and sensor APIs. We're going to focus on 3 specifically: the web speech API, the device orientation API, and the ambient light sensor. Ambient light sensor is my favorite, so we'll look at that at the end because it's the one I enjoy the most. Save the best for last. Now, I do want to stress that this talk is called Fun with Browser and Sensor APIs because I like to play and tinker. So that's what my examples are going to be. None of them are particularly practical, but they're really experiments to kind of get you thinking about how you might use these in your projects or your side projects or in your workplace. A lot of them are really just things that I wanted to do with the APIs, but don't let that limit your thinking. Just because it can't be done right now doesn't mean it's not something that can be done in the future. Now, some have really good browser support and some are very experimental, but remember, everything was experimental at some point, right? So let's see what maybe the future of APIs and sensors look like on the web. And one more piece of housekeeping, the support legend. At the beginning of each section, I'll have some logos. If it's a full logo, it's full support. If there's no logo, it's not supported. If it's behind a flag, it'll have a little flag next to it. So with that all out of the way, let's look at some code. We'll start with the web speech APIs because they're super duper fun. They're also quite well supported. Basically, what the web speech API is going to do is enable us to incorporate voice data into our websites and web apps. And web speech API is split up into two separate interfaces. The first one is speech recognition, which is for understanding human voice and turning it into text, which is what we're going to focus on today. And then the second is speech synthesis, which reads out text in a computer-generated voice. So, like I said, we're going to look at speech recognition. Before I show you the code, I might actually show you a quick demo of what it might look like. So I'll just click here in my browser and I'll say some things like hello. Now that was pretty close to what I said. Not quite right. Shall we try again? What should I say? Twinkle, twinkle, little star. Now what it's doing is, you see how it was changing? Basically, it's listening to what I was saying, and then as it gets more information, it adjusts itself to try and get a more accurate reading of the text. Now you can either in Chrome have it print out like this as you're talking, or you can wait until it's finished and then it'll give the best possible result at the end. Sometimes with my accent, it doesn't quite get all of the words right, but it's pretty good. Like, this is not too bad. So now that you've seen a demo, let's look at the code. Now we're going to need a few things, and the first thing is the speech recognition constructor, and that allows us to create a new speech recognition object instance, which will give us access to all the APIs, methods, and properties. Now there are quite a few, so I'm only going to show you the ones that we need in order to get a demo like that going. You can go and check out the others yourself. Some of the others are really just for like erroring and stuff like that. So the next thing that we're going to need is two methods, the recognition.start and recognition.stop methods. And they pretty much do what you'd expect. Start starts the speech recognition service, and stop stops the speech recognition service. In addition to that, stop will also attempt to return a result from the audio that it captured. But they pretty much do what you would expect, which is great. We also are going to need some event handlers. Now, most of them basically listen to changes in recognition status, and this is probably where there's a bunch of error stuff that you might be interested in when you're logging or debugging things. But the two main ones that we're going to need are onResult and onSpeechEnd. Now, onResult is a property that will run when the service returns a result. This is special because it's executed every time the user speaks a word or several words one after another. onSpeechEnd basically will run when the speech recognition service has stopped being detected. So again, pretty much what you would expect. Now the last thing, and this is a little bit, how should I say, clunky, is actually getting the results from the speech recognition service. So we do this by getting access to the speech recognition's results list object, which is basically a collection of information about the result, and it's a bit of a mouthful. Now, it's a little convoluted and it's a little bit annoying, and there are reasons, but I won't go into it in too much detail. But basically, what we need is the speech recognition result list object, and then from that, we need the first speech recognition result object, and then we need the results first speech recognition alternative object. Again, it's a bit of a mouthful, so if we look at this a slightly different way, basically, we get the list object of all of the results, and then we want to get the first result from that, and then the first alternative, and then the transcript, which is the text content. So it sounds complicated, but it's actually not too bad, and you always want to do this. There is, well, for all of the demos that I'm going to show you, you want to do this. This is how you get the actual content that you need. And if we put that all together, this will create that demo that I showed you just before. The only main difference here is that at the top, I'm looking for speech recognition, but I've got speech recognition or WebKit speech recognition. You do need the prefix in order for this to work in WebKit browsers, so make sure that you do that. Otherwise, it won't work and you'll get errors. And that's basically it. In addition to those things that I've just shown you, I just have like a text box on the page that will print out the text with some CSS for styling, and that's pretty much how you get everything going. You start it, you get the result, do something with it, and then when the speech is ended, you can stop the service. I mean, you definitely want to stop it, otherwise the browser will keep going and it'll have a sad time. So that's it. And once you've done that, you can do a bunch of stuff. So I won't show you that other demo again, but what I'll do is I'll show you Marshmallow. Marshmallow is my dragon. This is him. And what we're going to do is we're going to say a word, and he's going to breathe that word in fire. So I'm just going to go down to my button here. Fire. Oh, that worked. Okay, let's try something else. Maybe like hot. Oh, that didn't work. See, it didn't quite understand what I was saying. We'll try again. Hot. Ah, it worked that time. I'm going to try another word that speech recognition does not understand from me, but I'm going to overpronounce it in the hope that it will work perfectly, and then I'll say it in the way I normally would. Burn. Ah, it worked. It worked. Okay, let's just say it the way I normally would. Burn. Ah, see, it really does not understand me, and I think it's my accent, but, you know, we'll say something else like, light. White. Ah, see, so it doesn't always interpret things quite the right way, but when it does, it's very happy. I totally pressed the button too soon, and that's why it now says very happy, and it doesn't look very good. I should modify this so it grows to multi-line text, right? Fire. So I guess with this demo, what I wanted to show is that you can combine it with text. This is real text. You can copy and paste it using a variable font called Decovar. It's got SVGs, the speech recognition, but it's not that difficult to get this going. You can create something fun and interactive with very minimal effort. You can also create something like this. This is entirely an SVG. This is Smello. He's a good boy. And we're going to say some commands to him and he's going to respond. So we'll try, who's a good boy? Oh, Mello's a good boy. Okay, what's the other one? It's, where's the ball? And now he's looking for it. And this is cool, right? Because you can give the user the ability to change different things within a scene based on the input that they're saying. And all I'm really doing here is detecting certain phrases and doing things based on the detection of those phrases. I was printing them out at the top so that you can kind of see what text it receives. If I said something that it didn't recognize, it wouldn't obviously do anything. Right. So those are a couple of like cool demos, and I guess what it does is it allows us to create these more interactive and maybe more accessible experiences. Like maybe you give your users the opportunity to control the interface with their voice rather than having to use a traditional input device like a keyboard or a mouse. And I think that's a potentially very exciting area to look into, both for, you know, depending on what your app is, maybe, you know, using a mouse and a keyboard isn't the best way to do it. Maybe speech recognition would be a good alternative for people. Or maybe you're making something fun like Smello and you're creating a game and you want the user to drive the story that is going on. I think it's really fun and the support's pretty good for it. So you can have a lot of fun experiences with speech recognition. I'll show you a little example of speech synthesis at the end where I've combined it with some stuff, but it's very similar approach. So on that note, let's look at the orientation sensors. So this is probably something you're most familiar with of all of the browser and sensor APIs I'll talk about today. And that's the accelerometer, right? It's in many of our web-enabled devices, you know, like a mobile phone. So, for example, your mobile phone might detect the orientation of the screen and put it the correct way up, or, you know, if you rotate, you get YouTube videos full width horizontally, stuff like that. So, basically all it's doing is detecting the orientation of your device, and less common in laptops, more useful for your mobiles or tablet devices. And the support is pretty good. So again, there's a couple of things we're going to need. First, we're going to need the device orientation event. And this provides us with information on the physical orientation of the device that we're using. And today we're going to look at the three properties, alpha, beta, and gamma. And they represent different values depending on the device orientation. So the way you might look at this, this is alpha, and it's kind of like a level. So it's the rotation of the device on a flat surface. It can be a number from 0 to 360. And then you've got beta, which is tilting forwards and backwards. And that's a range of minus 180 to 180. It's, I guess, the front to back motion that you would normally expect. And then finally is gamma, which is like tilting left or right. And that represents a range from minus 90 to 90. And this is the one that I use the most. I think it's the most natural, thing for a user to change on a device. So we'll have a look at some code. First, we need to check to see if the device orientation event exists. And that's just to make sure that we have access to the information so we don't get a bunch of errors. Then if we have access to the event, we can add the device orientation event listener to the window and pass in a function that does some code. So for example, that might be something as simple as this, like we want to get the gamma value, so event.gamma. If it's less than a certain value or more than a certain value, then we would do something. Much like speech recognition, we don't need a lot of code to do this. Like most of the code you're going to write is the stuff that you're going to do as a result of these values. So changing the screen, moving something, rotating something, changing the color, making the SVGs move. Like a lot of the effort comes from whatever the end result you want to be is, not the actual detection. So it's a little bit hard to demo the device stuff. So I filmed some videos. They're not that awesome, I'm afraid, but you get the picture. As you can see, I use the gamma value a lot to do left or right because, like I said, I think it's the most natural. I really like this one. This is rotating the UFO. I've actually got a really good example of this later as well, like an extension of it. So keep an eye out for it. And then next we've got a text effect. So as it rotates, the text will slam into the side of the screen. Ironically, my phone is smashed in this, which I think kind of builds upon the effect, although it was definitely not intentional. I do think it's funny that it goes with the actual demo itself. This one is one of my favorite demos, and I really like it because it's quite subtle. And I like that on a desktop, you wouldn't sort of get the effect of the rotation, but as soon as you rotate the device, you would see a different experience. It's cool. And then we've got this one here, which again is using a variable font that changes the weight and transform based on the device orientation, and it works it out based on the number of letters in the word. They're super cool. I had fun making them. So, with that in mind, what I like about orientation is that we can move away from these kind of static, predetermined animations, right? And allow the user to shape that experience instead. You see a lot of orientation and motion stuff in games or augmented reality, maybe for map with turn-by-turn navigation, and some subtle UI effects like parallax, very common. And I think while people are making more use of those, I would like to see people take more advantage of the opportunity to add like an additional dimension to our experiences on the web. Like I said, there's a lot of predetermined stuff like hover states or animations where you hit a certain point in the page and it does a thing that you've defined. But with device orientation, speech recognition, and ambient light, we can take information from the user, from the environment that they're in, and we can use that to help tell the story. And to me, that's really amazing because we can create an immersive, engaging story that allows the user to be a part of that experience. But not only that, create an experience which is unique to them and nobody else, because it depends on how they use something, what environment is, what they say. And I think that is so exciting to me. I love that idea, and I'd love to see more of that on the web. And with that in mind, let's talk about light sensors, because I think that is especially relevant to the ambient light sensor. So, what is an ambient light sensor is something, like, it's not something most people are familiar with, but it's actually quite common in our devices. Basically, it's just a photo detector that's used to sense the amount of ambient light that's present in the environment. And it's found in all sorts of devices, like mobile phones or laptops, TVs. So like if you're in a dark room, your screen will dim so that you're not being blinded by the light. Blinded by the light. Sorry, distracted. Laptops as well, like if you're in a dark room, your keyboard light is brighter than if you're in a light room where it dims. So it basically just senses ambient light. Now, this sensor is not very well supported. You need to enable flags, and it's the most difficult to get going, but I really love it, and I'd really love to see it being used more. I think a lot of people dismiss it as being frivolous and not very useful, but I strongly disagree, and I'll talk a little bit about that when I show you some demos. So first of all, much like the other ones, we need a few things. First, we need to create a new instance, which gives us access to the ambient light sensor. So we do that with new ambient light sensor to create a new object. And then we need an event handler. So we're going to use onReading. This is not specifically for ambient light sensor. It's actually part of the sensor interface, which contains a bunch of different properties, event handlers, and methods that any sensor can use. So it's kind of cool that you can learn how to do this, and then you're kind of able to pick up using the other sensors as well once you do that. So as you would expect, on reading, the event handler is called when a reading is taken. So it's pretty straightforward in that regard. The second thing we need is Illuminance, which is the only property attached to the ambient light sensor, and it will return the current light level in a lux value. Now, you don't really need to know a whole lot in depth about lux, but you can get tables which kind of tell you what the average lux value for an office or a bedroom or outside, that kind of thing is. So you can use that to make your calculations. All of my demos, I've done the extreme for demo purposes, but if you wanted to get more specific, the information is quite easy to come across. So putting it all together, I've put this in a try-catch just to, catch any errors if it's not supported in the browsers. But as you can see, again, it's like super duper straightforward. There's not a lot that you need to do. Again, all of the work is done by whatever it is you want to do with this code. So with that in mind, I'm going to show you a few demos. So let's jump over into Chrome. Now you see here, I've got my little moon man and he's currently sleeping, but if I add some light, we get the sun. Now, I really like this one. It's one of my favorite demos. I've taken the light away. I actually had to adjust this for demo purposes because, I normally have it set quite low. So, it's based on the darkness of the room. But I think this is really cute and I really love it. And I'd love to see this kind of thing. Like, imagine changing your personal portfolio website based on how dark it is in the room. Like, if somebody came to you when they were looking at it, in their bed on their mobile phone, it might look different to someone who's like in an office like this. I love this demo. It's super duper cute. Now we've also got this one. This uses a variable font, and what it does is it changes the font weight based on the amount of light that's in the room. Now this is one of the reasons that I think the ambient light sensor would be extremely useful. So imagine if you have a web app or a website that is used a lot by people on tablets who are going from maybe a dark room to outside. When the light changes in a room, it actually changes how legible text can be. Like, you might have something be quite thin when there's a lot of light, but then when it's dark, it's a bit harder to read, so you want to make the weight thicker. Now, I chose this font because it's a good like demo to see how things change, but you know, from a practical perspective, the UX of this and the legibility of the text to make this better for our users could be really beneficial. I think there's a lot of practical applications for the ambient light sensor if we want to start creating experiences which suit our users' needs in the moment that they're in right there and then. So this is another one that I made. So if I make it darker, I'm just covering up the sensor now. The moon moves up. But if I add some light, you see how it sort of changes based on the amount of light that's there. And if we go to the extreme, right? Oh, it's the daytime. You can kind of see it do its thing. I really like this. I'm still experimenting with it. I want to put like a bunch of things in here. But again, like, I just love the idea of changing the experience based on what's happening to you or me right at this moment. Create something that's unique for my user rather than the same thing for everybody. And that might not be good for your corporate website, but it is great for storytelling and unique experiences and games and that kind of stuff. And the web can do so much things. Like, we don't need to limit it to just what a corporate website might be able to do. Same with this one. When there's lots of light, you get some beautiful flowers because flowers need light to bloom. Well, most of them do. This is a variable font called Blooming GX by Typature, and Arthur makes the best variable fonts. You should totally check them out. He's like a genius. So yeah, there's some cool demos with ambient light that I really like. And, you know, just remember that we can do a lot with this, right? We can improve accessibility and user experience and legibility, and we can do creative things as well. Like, there's a lot of benefits here, not just in one way or the other. And I guess what I would say is don't be limited by what we can already do. The web is still really young and technology is still developing, and there's so much for us to create. And just because it can't be done right now doesn't mean it's not something that you can't figure out to do in the future. You know, you could create puzzles or other interactive experiences that require multiple inputs in order to complete them, like this secret message, which is extremely popular with children who, when I demoed it to them, they went on CodePen and they changed the text and then sent secret messages to their friends, which I thought was extremely cute and not a way that I'd intended it to work in the first place. Or we can do something with Smello. This is Smello, the Grumpy Wizard. And this one uses speech synthesis, so keep an eye out for that. Now, I'm just going to cover up the sensor with my finger here. So it's dark now, right? And I'm going to ask Smello to do some magic. Do some magic, Smello.
What did you say?
Oh, he doesn't understand. Maybe I'll say, show me magic.
Ask me nicely.
Oh, okay. He's grumpy. I say please. Okay. Please show me magic.
If I must.
So what I'm doing here is using ambient light, speech recognition, and speech synthesis to create an experience that I can create based on the environment that I'm in, that I can ask for something, but also have the website and Smello, in this case, talk back to me to tell me something if he doesn't understand, which I think is really, really fun. And this last one, I will show a video, but I'll quickly demo the ambient light. If I put my phone up, you'll see that it has this beam. Let's go to the video because it's a little bit easier to demo in the video. All right, with my cool Batman torch. So this actually uses a gyroscope as well, but it's very difficult to film, do motion, and ambient light all at the same time.
Commence abduction.
So we can finish my presentation by abducting a cat. And I love this because, you know, if you don't have the beam on, so no ambient light that's bright enough, you don't have it over the cat, and you ask to commence the abduction, it will fail and it will call you a fool. which I thought was super duper fun. So, you know, think about the experiences that you can make, think about what you can do, and have a little fun with it. And then maybe you'll figure out a way to do something that's hugely practical for our users for, you know, maybe your day job. And on that note, I hope you all had fun. I hope you go and experiment. Please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. And if you're looking for any documentation, honestly, the Mozilla Docs are the best place to go. Thank you so much and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Mandy, what a fantastic talk. I think that might possibly be the perfect way to start off day 3 of this year's conference. Everybody watching along at home, please do join me in giving Mandy our customary round the world round of applause. Now, if Mandy's talk has left you with more questions and answers, you are in luck, folks. The Q&A session will be starting any moment now, so head on over to GatherTown and join us for that, and have your questions at the ready. If you are watching along at home somewhere other than GatherTown, please do keep those comments rolling in, as well as the social media posts using the hashtag CityJS2021. Once again, Mandy, thank you very much for that amazing talk. Mandy, that was a fantastic talk. Thank you very much for being a part of this year's conference. I'm sure everybody at home is giving you a round the world round of applause, but we'll give you a little extra one right now.
Oh, thank you so much. That's so nice.
So we've had a few questions come in, so I think we should dive straight into it, and hopefully we'll have enough time for me to get onto some of my own, because I do have a few. So Andre has chimed in and has asked what the support is like using the web speech API for languages other than English.
Yeah, it depends on the language for starters. Like obviously the languages that are used more regularly through Google's speech recognition API are better than the ones that aren't, because you know it's learning. But like they're not too bad. You kind of got to test them out and see how well they go. But even then, like pronunciation can sometimes be a bit off. Like I find, even though English support is pretty good, my Aussie accent sometimes gets a bit stuck with some of the words. It thinks I'm saying something different, like when I overpronounce my A's or something. So it's not great, but the more you use them, the better it gets. I have noticed even over the past couple of years since I've been playing with it that it's much better than it was when I first started. So and you know, Google feeds that data in from everywhere, so it's getting better like every minute probably.
Yeah, and I imagine all of the smart speakers which are proliferating themselves around the world are really, really helping, because I think I'm right in saying at the core level it uses the same technology to transcribe. Is that correct?
My understanding is that it does. Like it all goes into their speech to text service, and even like Mozilla uses their speech to text service as well, because it's better than their deep speech. At the moment, you can help Mozilla make theirs better, but like even they admit that Google's is much better than theirs. So I guess that's just the nature of Google and all of their data and devices and stuff like that.
Yeah. And we've got pretty much the same question, but more around dialects. Does it handle different dialects well, or have you already touched on that?
I would say no, just based on my experience using it with my Aussie accent. So I would imagine that dialects would probably be even worse. But, you know, if it's something that you want it to improve in like your particular dialect, then use the technology more and feed it data and it will get better. Like even when I was working on some of my demos, I was saying a word multiple times. And at first, it got it wrong every time. But by the end, and by the time I finished with the talk, it was perfect. So even it was learning by me, by like the nature of doing demos. So, you know, you got to teach it, I guess.
That came from Andre. Andre, I highly recommend you check out the smart speaker that the BBC are creating here in the UK, because that is being tuned specifically to handle UK dialects. Because Mandy,
Ah.
somebody in the north of the country sounds nothing like somebody from the south or the southwest. It's completely
Yeah.
different. I'm sure it's the same in Australia, right?
Yeah, the different areas, different pronunciation, I guess. But yeah, totally. You gotta feed it data. So the more info you give it, the better it'll be.
Feed the beast.
Yeah.
Somebody has asked if you've got any videos or could point towards some instructions on how to toggle the flags. I assume this is the feature flags they're talking about.
Yeah, I don't have a video, but if you go to, let me see if I've got it open. The way you access flags in Chrome, at least, is just Chrome : 2/ and flags. And the two that you have to enable are experimental web platform features and generic sensor extra classes. Those are the two that need to be enabled for ambient light sensor, at least. The other two should just work. You don't need flags for those.
Whew, we do like a flag, don't we?
I like flags.
So we've got another question from Andre, actually. Thank you, Andre. Where would you send people for discovering variable fonts? And they've also said that they want an entire talk just on variable fonts.
I've given so many talks just on variable fonts. Actually, this talk came out of my variable fonts talk because that's why a lot of my demos are text-based, because I made a bunch of demos to demo how cool variable fonts were. And then I was like, oh, this ambient light and speech recognition stuff, this is cool. I'll just pull that out and make a separate talk. So Google actually has a really great resource called Variablefonts Io. It's been put together by a bunch of really cool people. It talks about how to use them, where you can get stuff from. It's got a bunch of other resources. I have a website called variablefonts.dev, which has a few blogs on it about how I made some variable font demos, which I'll actually be updating in the next week or two as well. But yeah, I highly recommend variablefonts.io for variable font stuff. It's the best resource to send you everywhere.
Of course, go and find your previous talks on variable fonts would probably be the best jump off point, wouldn't it?
Well, I mean, you could, but there are lots of good talks on variable fonts out there, not just mine.
And the final question from our audience: do you know of any page listing different demos for the different sensor APIs?
Yeah, there is one. I don't know off the top of my head. Intel, not of my demos, but Intel have a, let me see if I can find it while we're sitting here. Intel have a page called generic sensor API playground. If you Googled like Intel generic sensor demos, you'll probably have it come up, and that'll have the ambient light and the accelerometer, along with some other cool ones. For speech recognition, I don't know any off the top of my head. None that I can think of.
So I did a talk on speech recognition stuff, and I found the Google Web Platform sample. That was a good place to start with it. It just steps you through the bare bones of what you need. So I highly recommend that. It sounds like Mandy's kind of agreeing with that.
Yeah. MDN has, I did a lot of mine stuff from the Mozilla docs. They are pretty good step-by-step as well. You can just copy and paste their code to get started. Otherwise, a bunch of my demos are up on CodePen. You can just copy and paste them.
Cool. And I believe there was a CodePen link in your slide, so I'm sure that people have found you there already.
Probably. Yeah.
Fingers crossed, eh? So that's all of the ones from the audience, but I have a question myself. So imagine you had a blank slate and anything was possible. What kind of sensors and APIs would you like to see come out of our mobile phone? Is there something missing that you think, oh, that would be really, really cool to be able to play with?
That's a really good question. I mean, it's not different to So my favorite of all of these was the ambient light sensor, because I think it has a lot of really good accessibility and usability use cases. But I would like it to be more than I would like it to be tied, the sensors to be like connected better. So like with speech recognition, you can listen to what somebody says, and it can turn it into text, but you don't get timestamps for when that happened. So it's much more difficult to link it up with something like the ambient light sensor, or other kinds of technology, because there's no way to link the two without like a lot of effort. So I would like the sensors to be easier to combine, but I think there's like a fine line between cool, fun stuff and, oh my gosh, everybody knows everything about what I'm doing right now. So I think you kind of have to be a bit careful with it. I know that a lot of people don't think ambient light is very practical, which is why it hasn't got as much interest, but I think they're wrong. So I don't know if there's one that I think is missing, but I wish they could be utilized more effectively and easier than perhaps they are now. There is one that I think would be cool, actually. Like, I think it actually already exists. There's one you can use with like metal, and it like does stuff. And I just thought it'd be fun to, it's like magnets or something.
Okay.
I think it might exist, like
Magnometer, so like a compass type thing.
Yeah. I think that would be fun to play with, but I haven't done anything with it yet, because I think you can detect a magnetic field, and I just feel like I could make something cool with that. I don't know, maybe smell. That would be cool.
That would be cool.
Actually, yeah, because then you could tie that in with the ambient light sensor, a smell, temperature maybe. Does it have a temperature sensor? I don't think you can access it on the web with JavaScript, but that would be cool. Imagine creating a whole warm or cold website depending on what the temperature was with someone.
That would be really, really cool. That would be funky. We're fast approaching the end of this Q&A session, so it's time for us to move on to our rapid fire questions. We're putting these questions to every single speaker in order to survey the developer landscape. And we start off always with the most important question, which is tabs or spaces?
I do a tab that converts to spaces. So I hit the tab key, but it's spaces.
Excellent. Front end or back end?
Front end.
And apples or bananas?
It depends.
It depends. Well, on that note, we're going to have to call time here. Mandy, thank you very much for being a part of this year's conference. It was a pleasure to host you and a pleasure to join this Q&A session. If you're watching along at home, please do visit the sponsor booths. There are still some amazing prizes for you to win. But for now, Mandy, thank you very much for your time and energy.
Thanks for having me.